Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to make this style of ring. And I just want to talk to you a little bit before we get started. For years I've been making with like a 20 gauge wire, a very simple wire wrapped ring. There'll be a link up here to that video to show you how to, how to kind of follow along with that. But I made those rings to make them be very simple, very affordable, and very adjustable for when I'm in my booth so that I can adjust them to fit whoever might want to take it home. Whereas now we are making this style of ring with what I call a vine band, just because it's kind of like a vining and it grows on itself, and we'll get into that. But this one, I don't know how to make it adjustable, but I'm really excited to share this design with you. And what has prompted this is I'm out of 20 gauge wire, but I've got loads of 22 gauge. So let's go ahead and get started. Today I'm going to be using 22 gauge wire, but you could do this design with a 20 or an 18 gauge as well. One of the main things that I always look out for is making sure that my wire fits through the hole that is drilled in my bead. And so that's why I'm doing this design out of the 22 gauge, is this will give us an option for some of the beads that just aren't accommodating to a 20 gauge or thicker. And then we're going to do a couple of different variations, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, it is very, very helpful to have a ring mandrel, but you could also use like the rounded handle, anything that's tapered like this. So like a cooking spoon or a pool cue or a dowel that you've sanded, but there will be links to everything that we're using down in the video description. And those are affiliate links, so purchasing through them can help help support our business without any additional expense to you. And I do recommend if you're buying one, go ahead and get a metal one, y'all, because you can hammer on them, whereas I don't have as much luck hammering on the plastic ones, even though I do have a plastic ring mandrel that has like a little groove in it. And so I like having both, but if I had to pick one over the other, I'd recommend the metal one. This one's aluminum. I also have a stainless steel one for when I'm doing metal smithing, but aluminum works just fine. We have a 13-ounce dual-headed hammer that has, you can like interchange the heads. I typically just leave it on this one that's not perfectly flat. It's just a little convex. And then the nylon head, which I just use for whenever I'm like not trying to flatten our wire like how we did here, but I just want to harden it. And then bent nose pliers and wire snips. I'm using the bent nose pliers to smush in our loose ends after we snip them. So you could use really any like chain nose or flat nose for that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off about 5 feet of wire. That is significantly more than what we need, but I do like to have more than what I need for this, and I'll show you a little bonus project with the scrap. So we've pulled off our wire. I'm not putting it through my nylon jaw pliers or anything. I'm going to leave it nice and organic from having it on the spool. Like, we don't need it super smooth or anything. We just got to be able to get our bead on there. So I'm bringing my bead to the center of my wire, and we're going to want to make this like this one here ended up being a size 11, and I started making it on a size 13. Now there's going to be some variation just depending on how things go while you're wrapping it, but that's a pretty good, that's the gauge that I use. Like if I'm going to be aiming for, let me see, what size am I? Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to be aiming for a size 8. So I'm going to be wrapping on the size 10. And you can use any size bead here. Here I'm using an irregular turquoise nugget, which I think is just beautiful. And then I'm also going to be wrapping some, we're going to be making a couple of these today just to explore the different variations. I also have an 8mm faceted glass and a 6mm tiger's eye here. That I'm just setting off to the side, but right now I'm using a 4mm howlite, just because I really do want to see how it looks with a teeny tiny bead. And so I'm just wrapping around. I've threaded through through our bead and I'm wrapping around the mandrel, and I am being careful to not cross my wires this way just yet because that builds bulk. And on something like, I prefer a nice thin ring band. So we can always add bulk if you want it, but we don't have to. And so from here, we could do, and that's the thing with this, you guys, there's no right or wrong way to do wire wrapping. So like if you're following along with this tutorial and you're like, ooh, what if I did this? Try it. So much of wire wrapping is just creative problem solving, but so long as it holds together, is not painful or uncomfortable to wear, and looks pretty to either you or somebody else, because sometimes, you know, I'll make something and all I see are the flaws in it, but we'll put it in the booth for sale because it meets the first two criteria, and somebody will see it and they'll just love it. And so it's like, you know, art is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder or something. So, you know, don't be giving yourself a hard time if you don't think it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, because somebody else might think that. On this one, I did a whole bunch of wrapping up around the bead. I'm not going to do this on this one. We're going to be tackling another, probably one of the larger beads for that. On this one, I just want to try doing the vining. So I'm going to wrap, and we have 4 now. 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps around our ring mandrel. And again, I'm going to keep it at that size 10, but I'm going to pull my mandrel out. And so really, if you had something just roughly about the size of your finger, you could probably still manage even without the ring mandrel. And so I'm going to hold on to the bead, and I'm just going to, I bend with my finger to get a little loop through, and I push through, and then I'm going to pull through. And I want to get this wrapped kind of tight up around all 4 of these wires. And on this side, I've just done like one little wrap to kind of hold that on. Here, let's see. I always hesitate to zoom in because I'll wander out of frame, but I promise you I'm doing my best, y'all. So we're going to just come around this way. And again, I'm taking my finger. This 22 gauge is so soft and supple, so it's very nice to, and I'm using copper core wire that's been silver plated and then enameled by a company called Parawire. We sell some of their wire on our website, but to find a full catalog of their colors and gauges, I recommend going to parawire.com. They will be linked down below. I've been using their wire for years and I just love it. So we can continue just wrapping around, and I'm going to start making this a little wider. And so I'm just kind of whip stitching. And if you prefer, if you don't like that method of pressing some of the wire through, you can get the tip of your wire. Ooh, I just poked myself. And so literally like the wire is the needle and the thread, and just whip stitching around our ring band. And so this is the basic concept. You technically don't even need a bead on this, you guys. You can do it with just wire, which is really, really nice because, you know, sometimes you're out of beads and you still want to craft. Okay. So we've gotten here now where we're coming up on where our other wire is exiting. And I kind of want to, because right now if I cross this around, it might, I don't want it crossing over itself like that. Do you see how that happened? Let me, because it adds bulk. If it does happen, I like for it to happen at the sides, because then we'll end up with like a little organic protrusion. But if it's happening, you know, yeah, I don't know. Again, it's just not my favorite way, but there's not technically anything wrong with it. It's just what I'm aiming at here is being able to press this around, pull our wire through. There we go. And then vine, oh yeah, those are just nestling in really nice and friendly with each other. Very nice. And so pressing through. And I'm going to pull that out. Whomp. All that wire. And yeah, it's just like morning glory vines is what it reminds me of. Or the, we have sand milkweed that grows as a vine here in Missouri. And once one of those vines finds its way up a trellis or a fence or, you know, a wire or something, it just grows, and all the other vines will kind of grow in and follow in its path. And so I really wanted to encapsulate that wild, organic, grew that way element into our wire wrapping. So you can see how that's coming along. And this right here, as we're coming up on the next part, is why I give myself so much wire, because you might want to go full on cray ham with adding swirls and vines. Like, you can add vines to it until you can't see those core wires at all. But we're going to have some options here for decorating around our bead. Okay, let's do one more, and that's going to exit us right up next to our bead. So whenever we come onto the back of this, do you see how those, oh, they just nestled in like that? That makes me so happy. So just pressing through, pulling that loop through, and then it just lands right there. So from here, let me zoom back out. Let me get this other side matched up to it. Because on this one, I was doing all sorts of switchbacks, and I was, you know, adding in some little swirls that I then was like, you know, this is probably going to get stuck in my hair. Let me test it. You know, I'm actually pretty surprised that didn't get stuck in my hair, but I don't trust it a bit. So if you're making a ring for yourself and you think it'll be fine, that might be something. But if I put this one out for sale in our booth, I'll definitely let folks know that it's like, you know, that may get snagged in your hair. But yeah, just wrapping around and getting these right up on our bead. Oh, I love it when they nestle in between each other. Not at all necessary. Typically it used to happen so rarely for me that I was like, ooh. Okay, so now we're over here. We've got, technically our ring band is like done. Like, we don't have to add any more to that. I just wanted to make it structural enough that it's going to take a really hard pinch to deform it from its shape. And this hasn't even been hammered yet. Oh, so this is actually going to, ooh, because before being hammered, we're at a size like 7.5. And I think we wanted this to be an 8. So let me hammer this. It's going to be loud. Okay, so this actually ended up stretching it or compressing it significantly more than I had intended to, but I think that'll be okay. So a size 8.5. Oh yeah, that fits quite nice. Oh, and I love that too. Oh, Howlite's one of my husband's favorite stones, and I don't work with it a whole lot because I'm a very, like, I like colorful and vibrant and like pow, and Howlite's very white marble and stoic and fancy to me. So it's like, I don't know, it didn't match my vibe, but it certainly matches his. So I'm happy to make something. Oh, and so now we're just wrapping. I've wrapped the wire around one side and then around the other. And normally in our simple wrap rings, I do that part first and then bind the edges off, and it's just 2 wires and the 20 gauge coming around. I'm really excited to be doing something different, y'all. What if we went under? Oh, that's different. I like it better on top, but don't be afraid to experiment and find your favorite way. And so if we wanted to take up more space or make a thicker wire, like a thicker ring band, we could totally come through And I'm just going to do a little itsy bitsy spiral just to give this a little bit of something on either side. But we could come through and we could do all sorts of layering on top as well. I'm just going to see if I can bring some of these wires around and get them to nestle in with the others. Oh, I like that layered effect with the unhammered on top of the hammered. Whoop! Knocking rings and stuff off the table. And so you may not like this. You may want, let's try them in between. You know, so it's kind of crossing a little bit. You see how it crosses and takes up some of that space? And that's okay. It's wild. Let's let it be what it's going to be and see what happens. Because the nice thing about this Pyrowire is I think, comparatively to, you know, sterling or something, it's quite affordable. It's very easy to work with. We've had I had a hand injury a few years ago that I'm finally starting to fully recover from, but mentally I still have that fear in me of it being damaged again, like overworking it and causing, you know, to where I can't craft anymore again for a while. Oh, there goes the trash truck. But so using thinner gauge wire and focusing on not doing a death grip, because like normally I'm like really cramped on there, but you don't have to be. But working with these thinner gauge wires does help me to not overstrain my hands. And so with this one, I think I'm going to leave that right there, and I'm going to be sneaky because I know I'm going to be putting a spiral on this side as well. Well, not sneaky, but I'm going to be strategic and snip right there, because this way our spiral will be on top of that loose end. So let's see if we can zoom in and see where'd that loose end go. He's right there. So I'm just going to come in with my bent nose pliers and give that the old squishy smush. I'm going to get that wire out of the way so you can see, hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Just like that. And I'm just using the jaws of my pliers to smash that little piece of wire. I don't want to get the wire to bite through itself, but I just want to make sure that there's no little pokey bit, and we test with my finger, no little pokey bit protruding. Very cool. And so now from here we have our, I'm going to use my thumbnail to kind of press that tight off to the side of our 4mm bead. And then we're coming whoop, nice and snug right there. I'm going to do, I call it an itsy bitsy spiral. I've got my left finger here inside the ring, and I'm putting my right finger on top, and I'm just going to, you can see how much I press that it dimples my finger like that. But I just want to press, and then I'm going to rotate. And do you see how it makes that teeny tiny little loop? And I like doing that. It's not always in the spot that I thought I wanted it to be, but that's fine. That's part of the creative process of all this is, well, that's not what I planned, but this is what's happening. And that gives me the little seed of our spiral that the rest of the wire will grow around. And then we can get our bent nose pliers in here and just squish it until it's where we wanted it to be, and just pretend like it was like that the whole time. So doesn't have to be perfect. And we're gonna, yeah, let's build up another layer. I'm gonna kind of squish it over some more. And from here, we can now travel this wire back down around our ring. And you don't have to add those spirals if they're not your cup of tea. I just like the shape that it gives. I feel like this gives me a much more solid feeling ring than the ones that I've typically made in the past. But to be fair, I sell them for $5, so I try to make them be my absolute minimum. This is the least amount of materials and the least amount of work for the least amount or lowest price point. So, you know, and I still have fun and try to do my best making them, but whenever, and if you're not interested in selling your work, just tune me out. But if you're like me and you are running a business and you're always enjoying what you're making, but there's also that part of your mind that's like work mode as well. I try to have varied price points within my booth. So it's, if I make something, like if I'm making a new product line, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. If I'm making a new product line for in my booth, like let's say if I'm making hand flowers or circlets or something that's like branching out from what I've normally carried typically, I would want to have a low, medium, and high price point. And that way, if somebody gets lured in by like, oh my God, that's so shiny and beautiful, and not lured like I'm out hunting, but you know, it's kind of like fishing, casting our line into the, you know, folks walking past at the craft show. And if something in my booth catches their eye, and they come in and it turns out to be, you know, the high price point, and they're like, that's out of my budget. And it's like, oh, well, we have a piece that's similar but different here for just $5. And they'll be like, okay, I mean, but it's kind of lacking. And I'm like, well, we have this one here that's 10. And then so and it gives so much more variation of basically with the same wire and the same beads, I could make 3 different versions and have a 5, 10, and 15 or something. You know, I'm kind of just grasping at easy numbers here, but that's been the most effective strategy from a sales perspective, whether I am selling our tie-dye or our dragon sculptures or our wire rings. So I feel like there's a time and place for all levels of jewelry and all levels of intricacy, but it is nice to have something that this would probably be in our certainly mid or higher end price points, because it's got so much of, you know, me in it with, you know, my style and my artistry and 5 feet of wire, you know, as opposed to, I think, the 12 inches that it takes of a thicker gauge to make a simpler ring. So I've kind of rambled a little bit. I hope I stayed in frame, but I really hope that that's helpful to y'all. We get questions a lot about how to do our pricing, or you know, for advice on how to do pricing, and we get asked quite a bit about you know, I'm doing my first craft show or, you know, trade show or convention, so we've given that a snip. Where'd that loose end go? But yeah, we get a lot of questions about, I'm doing my first vending event, what should I have in stock? And it's like, well, everything, but start, you know, anything that you want, really. It's your business, it's your booth, you do you. But having varied price points really helps, because if I only have $5 items, you know, if I bring 100 items and they're all just $5, I can only make $500 in sales. But if some of them are $5 and some of them are $10, you know, I'll be able to make more. All right, I'm going to whack this with the hammer again. I just threaded it back onto our ring mandrel. So there we are at around 8.5. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. But oh my gosh, I love how much more solid the ring band looks and feels. So let's see. Oh, I love that so much. It has a much lower profile by being able to use that 4mm bead. And it's beautiful from all angles. So again, I want to show y'all right here, whenever we do crossovers like that, those can be potential pinch points where the wire will kind of cut through itself if we hammer too hard. So that is something to look out for. But I like that quite a bit. So let's make another one. This one we're going to do with the 22 gauge wire. Oh yeah, and then we've got, what is this? 16 inches of scrap on this end. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 inches of scrap from this end. So those are perfectly long enough, and the 22 gauge is fantastic for making wire wrapped bead links. The 22 gauge is great for making, I think I've got it over in, let me go grab something for you. I couldn't find it, but it's a little bird nest ring. Or not ring, but like a little bird nest charm made entirely out of scrap wire. So there is no waste. I call it first use is off the spool. This would be second use. And then if I were to make, you know, something out of this and still have some left over, that's third use. And at that point, it's like, I'll be pretty okay with putting it into my scrap bin. We've got a local, like a scrap metal place that will accept bags of enameled copper wire from me. I don't get a great price for it, but I like it better than just throwing it away. So we've cut 5 feet of this is an antique copper toned 22 gauge wire. And what I love about this is it won't turn my skin green. I used the vintage bronze tone and made myself a necklace about 12 years ago at this point, and I've never needed to rewrap it, and I am prone to turning green, y'all. So, and you could totally make this out of like a copper wire, you know, that if you pull it out of like old electronics or something, or if you just go to the hardware store and buy some wire by the foot and like some cable by the foot and peel the rubber exterior off and take the copper wire out of that, you could totally do. It doesn't need to be enameled. This is just my preference because I'm going to be honest, I don't want to have to polish all this stuff. And we live in a drafty old house. And so if something can patina, it will. Which means if it can need polished, it will need polished. And I'd rather be crafting. So this is just a little 6mm tiger's eye ring. And the most common size that we sell out of our booth is a size 10. So typically, whenever I'm making the rings that I know I can be resizing for people, I'll just make them all the way up to a size 15 because I can size them down. But here, I'm going to be making a size 12 in hopes that it sizes down to a size 10. And so just wrapping around until we have 3 or 4 wires. We're going to start with just 3 on this one. Because if I wanted it to be 4, I just bring it around again. And now we have 4 bands. It just depends entirely on how thick you want your final band to be. And from here, instead of doing like how we did on the 4mm bead, I'm going to do the wrap around the bead first. Now I'm just going to use my thumbnails because I'm a monster. To kind of bend in those sides to let it nestle next to our bead. But typically, really what would be better is if I just used my pliers. Now, I'd hesitate to do this if this were a softer stone, like a malachite or a hematite, something that's brittle, because that inner pressure from the wire pressing on the inside of the bead, or if this were a bicone, like a crystal bicone, I'd want to watch out for pressing the stone against, or the glass against the metal. But be careful, you know, it only takes a couple of times of cracking beads before you'll start to get a feel for what causes it and what doesn't. But I'm always pushing the boundaries of what I can get away with my jewelry crafting to see, you know, how much can the bead take. And so I'm just wrapping, let me back up a little bit. So you can see our wires are coming off to the sides, and so I'm going to wrap kind of up and around and down and around. And we're going to do, 3 turns of this, I think, just because that feels like a nice round number. And do you see how that makes like such a cute little nest around the bottom of the ring, or the bottom of the bead? Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. I do hope that it's helpful to you. I have so much fun crafting, and making videos gives me a great way. It keeps my mind in a state of interest and curiosity, and I learned so much from you all down in the comments, from your suggestions and your ideas and your questions, and you know, even sometimes when it's like, that was a terrible idea, why would you do it that way? I always appreciate when y'all are kind with me, but I do love constructive criticism. It's how we grow. So I'm doing, again, with that 3 motif, 3 little wraps around all 3 bands. And so I'm going to come around to the other side. So I do want to let you guys know that if you do have any questions or anything, do feel free to leave a comment down below. I've been trying my best to keep up with comments, but yeah, we post a new video every Friday, so it can be a little tricky to keep up with it. But it's an absolute joy to me to get to hear from you guys, so I appreciate you. We also, hey everybody in the live chat, if you're watching this during our premiere. Oh, I probably shouldn't have. Well, maybe. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, and then I had 1, 2, 3. So I try to pay attention to where the wire is exiting. So like here, the example of that is that's my first wrap. That's my second wrap. This is my third wrap, and the wire's not going down and around. It's just protruding out. So whenever we come around to this side, we've got our first wrap, our second wrap, and our third wrap. And so that just helps me to keep things a little bit symmetrical-ish. And now, let's see. We can totally do just a little stealthy little loop. I don't know why I think of it being stealthy. It's like, tee-hee, it's a secret spiral. And it's like, no, it's not. I literally have it on camera, and it's like, hee-hee, they don't see me. But no, well, it's only because I'm out of frame. But yeah, I'm just going to wrap around just a little like that. And then I'm going to press that wire through. And do you see how it's disrupting? And oh, it pulled our spiral. It's fine. We'll just squish it back into place. So I'm going to pull that wire through. And then I'm just going to use my pliers to kind of bring that around and smush to hold it into place. So I'm actually going to hold on that spiral and then cross my wire across. So don't be afraid to use your tools. If your hands aren't doing it for you, if you're like me and, you know, feeling it, that's okay. Let's I'm going to zoom out, wiggle our fingers, rotate our wrists, catch the ring as it tries to run and escape. So let's see. Swipe through there. Swipe through there. And I'm doing this one a little tighter. So we could do our wraps where they're just a few millimeters apart, or we could come around and do let's show a wider wrap. You know, so like much more loose. Just the distance between that. You know what? And I kind of like that, with it being tighter up by the sides and looser by where it'll be underneath the finger. So now from here, and then coming around, I'm going to stop here because I want to be able to accomplish a spiral up against our core wires on the same side, or on the other side in kind of the same spot. So just not really paying attention to which direction it's going in, because I'm looking for something that's organic and not exactly necessarily perfectly spiral or perfectly symmetrical. And we're going to spiral around. We just do our little loop and then one little like little whoom around it. So there we go. And now from here, we can start feeding through, holding that spiral down with my thumb, but don't hesitate to use your pliers. Okay, and now we can get our wires kind of layering into each other's territory. So I've come back now to the wire from the first side we were working on. Ooh, and this is why I prefer to use my finger to push through. This is our wire is about to kink. If I pull on it, it's just going to make a smaller and smaller and tighter loop until the wire itself is pinched. So I'm just going to open that up and then try to guide it on through. There we go. Whereas if I go like this and then pull it through, I get way less kinking. And then I bet if we come in here, y'all, oh, I'm going to love this, I think, or I'll hate it. We'll see. Right there, that little spiral center, I'm going to thread our wire through trying to make sure it doesn't kink. Oh, and this is going to stabilize it, I bet. That way, if it gets like stuck in your hair, it'll be extra stuck. No. Oh, I kind of love that. It just makes it where it grew that way. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that wire there because I like it nestled up. Boop. And we're gonna get this other side grown around to the same way. And so I like them nestling in between each other. So there's two. And there's, I don't know why I'm counting. I'll just count, like I'll walk up and down the stairs and count them. Like I'll need to go upstairs for something. I'm not just like, I must count, must walk. But, so if you catch me counting, what I'm counting in this video is not super important. Sometimes I'm counting stitches to like stay on track. Sometimes I just count because it's fun, I guess. Oh, I'm loving how this is coming out. Ooh, and then we're coming around to that same spot. Wait, this is different. Uh-oh. Oh well. We'll just go through and pretend like it's not different. Oh, we can go like that. Okay, so for this one, it would come up from below. And if you can't fit it through, you could use like a T-pin or something, like a quilting pin or just your fingernail. Oh, to get to where we can bring that through. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, unless they change it, you may be able to touch the screen if it's on your phone or something and zoom in. I feel like it's useless if I'm out of frame. So I'd rather be zoomed out and let you try to like, zoom in on the screen your own self rather than me try to make that decision. And then it's like, well, now nobody sees anything. So, oh, I'm digging that. Number one rule of wire wrapping, y'all, is have fun. Like, let it be fun. Oh, I dig that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap around. Just as messy as I can, really. I just freaking love that. I just want to make a wild little nest for our little tiger's eye to be comfy in. Okay. And now we're going to start sewing that down. And you could make that nest as big and as wild as you want. I'm just going to bind it off 1, 2, 3 here on the shoulders, which is either side. I don't know why, but I think of that, right here and right here as the shoulders of the ring. Okay. So there's that. Now we're gonna hump, and then we're gonna go, so that's our first spiral. This will be our second, or not, first wrap. 2, and there's our 3. And so now from here, I'm gonna come in, and I am gonna do this zoomed in. And so I'm just going to get in there and snip. And I'm going to get in here and I'm going to snip. And I'm trying to give myself enough material that whenever we smush this, we'll be able to kind of tuck and hide that end into the folds and crevices of the other wire layers. So coming in with my bent nose pliers, and I am just going to squeeze the heck out of it to kind of just smush that down and around. Now, I'm not being too particular right now because we haven't even hammered this yet. And I always have one side that I like better than the other. This one's the one I like better. Do you see how it like tucked in there? Oh, I love it. All right, hammer time. So I am still exploring and trying to find a good technique for how to hold on to my ring mandrel while I am whacking it with a hammer without hurting my hand. I'm not there yet, but one day. Got the job done, and that's perfectly. Oh my gosh, I love that. So yeah, you can see that spread those inner wires out into a nice band real nicely. Now you can see here I have a little bit of an uneven taper on our ring. And so that's from, I think, having it be at this angle. So I'm going to take the mandrel out, flip our ring, and bring it down, and I'm going to hit it again. And my hope is that will accomplish making it just nice and flat. So you can see this one has a much more protruding stone than what the 4mm bead was. But you can totally do this in whatever stones that you like, because some folks, like I personally very much prefer the low profile of this one. I have sold many rings, many rings over the years with a high profile. So again, just because something's not my favorite doesn't mean it's not going to be a hit with our customers and clients. So, and that's a way that I can just give myself the grace to be creative and try new things. And if it doesn't come out in my favorite way, it gives me peace to be like, you know, somebody's going to love it. And then I can just let it go and get back to crafting and, you know, make something else again. So yeah, these are the rings. I hope that this is helpful to you guys. We also have a real short TikTok coming out. Check out our social media, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I think are all the places that we're on. But if you go to our website, backtoearthcreations.com, you can find not only jewelry for sale, but there's also a social media feed where you can just see what we post regardless of what platform it's on. So hopefully that'll be helpful to you guys. But we'll have a video showing how to make this without a bead. That it really only takes a minute. So yeah. You know, I almost forgot. I'm going to show you what we're going to do with our scrap wire. And I'm going to pull the longest one, whichever one of these is the longest of our scrap wire. That'd be this one. So I'm going to save that one off to the side, but then I have these 3 other wires, and I am going to, you could use round nose pliers, but you don't have to. I'm going to do just a little loop bend in the ends of each of these wires. And so to do that, I'm just grabbing a little, as close to the tip of the wire as I can, and I'm just going to bend it down. And that way we don't have any little pokey rogue wires. Wherever they're hidden by the time it's done. Whoop. So I'm just bending and then squishing. And this is a great time. This is technically scrap wire. If you goober it up, just trim it off and it'll be just that tiny bit. But experiment and see what feels good to your hand. What will the wire tolerate? What will, you know, just see what'll happen. Okay, so I'm gonna bend that, squish that. Oh, if this were bare copper or sterling silver, you could totally use a torch to ball the ends of this wire instead of doing a little loop like this, and I think that would look really cool. But we're just doing cold work today. Okay, so there we go. Whoop. All right, so once we have all of our ends prepped, I'm gonna just take our wire and I'm gonna start wadding it up, and I'm kind of cramming it towards itself. Let's get these loose ends, literally I'm wadding up a piece of paper. I'm gonna tuck some of the ends towards the inside, and then I'm rolling. And that's why I rounded the ends first, is because this hurts if I don't round the ends first. Woo! And then this one's not very tucked in. Do you see how it's so we'll just sew it, kind of fold it into itself. All right. And so from here, we can take this and I'm going to smush. You could use the end of your pliers actually. Oh, I like that. And then we might be able to come down here and squeeze just a little bit more, depending on the shape. This is going to be our bird's nest. So it depends on how large of a nest you want to make. It depends on, you know, just on what suits you. So try it and see if you like it. And if you don't, try something else. There'll certainly be a lot of scrap wire, you know, I know there was when I was learning to wire wrap. So don't be afraid to experiment. There's no wasted wire when you're learning. But yeah, if there's like a weird little, see how that's like loosey-goosey? So we're just gonna sew it through its own self. And then kind of just tuck that end in there. The birds outside are laughing at me. They say, "You call that a nest?" And I say, "Shh, eat your suet block." But yeah, so there's the basis of our nest. And then I have 3 of our little 4mm howlite beads. And this is what I'm going to be using on our longest bit of wire. So I'm going to thread 1, 2, and 3. If you have a store-bought bail or a jump ring or something, you could, like a jump ring, you could just kind of force through the wires and have it hold on. But I'm going to show you how to make a bail if you don't already have one. So we have our 3 wires, or our 3 beads onto our wire. And I'm going to just bring them to the middle and then make like a little bit of a loop, because the eggs usually like cluster and nestle, you know, in the lowest part of the nest. Oh, that's so cute. We used to keep quail and they lay like just the smallest, cutest little eggs. Ooh, wee bitty eggs. Now we have a bird nest on the front porch that I'm really, really hoping somebody moves back into and starts laying eggs so I can spy on them. I mean, bird watching. No, I'm spying. I'm like, what are they eating? What are they doing? So I've just, let me pull that back out so I can show you what I've done. I'm just going to take our wire and I'm going to stab it through and call it good and pull that down and in. And then I'm going to sew up through, not entirely around the edge. You could do that if you want. I think it kind of breaks up the chaos look, but I'm just going to sew back up and through, so I'm snagging some of those wires. And then I'm going to come in between our beads, and I'm going to come in between these 2 little guys. Oh, don't want that wire to kink. Oh, and it nestled right where I wanted it to. That rarely happens, so I'll count it as a blessing. And then I'm just gonna stab through. And then I'm gonna whoop through like that. And then we're gonna come through the center, because we don't want our eggs falling out, you know. How embarrassing. No, I like to use the back of my thumbnail as like a ramp for the wire to end up where I want it to be. And let's see, we could do another one, but I think that's in there. So this wire is just coming right up out the front. So I'm gonna sew that in, whoop, right through the back, pulling it through. And from here, we could use the wire, depending on how the stability of the piece feels. Whenever I use like a 24 gauge or thinner, I'll use one of the ends of this to kind of, I'm going to demonstrate, but you don't have to do this on the 22 gauge. It's just, you can if you want. I like to come through and just tighten up just the edges. So do you see how I'm snagging just that little bit of the edge? And it's not always the same wires if we wadded it up really nice. But I'm just coming around and doing that very similar vining to what we did to our rings. And I'm gonna try, as we move forward in making our tutorials through the new year, it's 2025 at the time of recording, I really want to do like a little bonus scrap wire project with you guys at the end of each of our tutorials, just as a thank you kind of for sticking through. I know I can get like quite rambly and off topic, but hopefully I do try to make it worth your time. And then if you have any spots that it's like, this wire, I don't like that one, you can take your round nose pliers, work really great for this. And you can just kind of make a little spiral and then like smoosh and just get it to be I don't know, a little bit more flowy and organic. I just didn't want anything that was like a nice crisp, broke the immersion. And so now we have our 2 wires coming out the top here. And if you run out of wire, you guys, you don't have to just use scrap wire. You can cut off some more wire and make yourself, like, make sure you have enough to do what you want to do. But I'm going to take these 2 wires and I am going to twist them. I just have them in like just about a 90-degree angle, maybe a little cuter than that. Like a little more narrow of an angle. And just twisting around. And I'm going to do... I like a nice wide bail, so I'm going to do enough that we can wrap this twice around. Here's a knitting needle. You could use a pen or a knitting needle or a mandrel, just what have you. And we're going to wrap around. There's once and there's twice. I just like a 2-loop bail just because. And I'm going to wrap around the neck of it. There's 1 and 2. Whoop. Then from here, all of this extra wire. Oh, we could totally. Okay, we could just sew it in like how we did before, or I'm going to make like a little spiral. I'm going to have one go off in one direction and one go off in the other direction. But this is a great time to practice and experiment because it's just a jumbled mess of wire. Like nobody is going to see this and be like, well, I don't know, they might come at me. But it's just fun. The magic happens in the details, and this is our opportunity to play with the magic of that. So I made a little spiral. I tucked it on the back. And then I'm going to sew this one through, boop, right through there. And then I'm just going to use the ends of my bent nose pliers to kind of tuck that around. Do you see how we made like that little bend? And then I'm just going to smush that in and smush it. So now that should be fine. And then from here we can come in, and again I'm going to make, because you could hide more beads, like some little metal beads. You do whatever you want. And then we're going to come around. I'm putting my thumb on it to hold the spiral down while I get that wire kind of entangled with the rest. And then, ooh, I brought this around, and I'm actually going to be I'm breaking all the rules that we established for the ring. I'm crossing over its own self because we're not going to be hammering this. I mean, you can. Oh, that might be cool if we hammered some of the wire in like some of the spots, and that way there'd be areas that are kind of like flat and flashy, and then there's other spots that are coiled, or I don't know. Oh, I didn't mean to wander out of frame. Let's zoom out some. So I'm just making another spiral. And then I'm just going to sew this back in right there. And I'm going to bring that end just right on in there. Just embracing the chaos. Woo! Bending that end and just smushing it right on in like a pin cushion into our little bird nest. And so yeah, I like the bails like this because oftentimes I'll pull them apart just a smidge, and if I'm stringing this on a necklace like with other beads, like using some beading cable, or even if I just wanted to make a wrapped loop, if you can visualize with me, pretend like we have some other beads on here, and then it'll thread through that bead. So that's why I like to do a double bail, because it lets us add a little something up at the top. So yeah, no such thing as scrap wire, y'all. If there's a crafter, there's a way. also bonus idea for like Mother's Day gifts and stuff. If you have a birthstone, I can't remember, let me know in the comments if it was you, but one of y'all in chat in one of our previous videos where I was making one of these was like birthstones, Mother's Day, boom, tell everybody. And I was like, okay, so let's make that the new trend. Hey y'all, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me in this video. I do hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, do leave them down below. We do new tutorials every Friday. We typically have a premiere with them. That way we can kind of just chit chat and hang out in the live chat, but you can watch our videos at any time. They're all for free here on YouTube. You can also find them over on our website, backtoearthcreations.com, where you can also find jewelry for sale and tie-dye and some of our different artwork and like custom beads, and just whenever through time and space that you're watching this, that should still be our website. You can find a calendar and just see what we're up to, and that way even if it's a year or 5 years from now, you can still, you know, hopefully connect with us. And I'm just trying to think of, like, I'm really bad at answering my emails, but I always try to do better. We'll see. Maybe future Vaughn will be better about answering her emails, but we'll see. So again, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out in this video, and I think that's everything. You can feel free to like and subscribe if you're into that. If you want to support the creation of more free tutorials, you can become a channel member, or you can join our Happy Crafter Club, where we send out kits each month, and we have a whole lot of fun with that. Some months it's wire wrapping, some months it's chainmail, but every month we're having fun with it. So, ooh, and polymer clay and leather too. Like, we're always branching out and trying new things. And I think, let me check my notes. I only wrote down record outro. I don't know what else I was supposed to talk about, but thank you guys again for being here. The channel just wouldn't be the same without you. So until next time, here's some videos and stuff for you to watch, maybe popping up on the screen, and I'll see you there. So happy crafting, you guys. Mwah. Bye.